Welcome back to the Fluffy Cow Studio. So thankful that you decided to drop in today. We're going to continue to work on our painting. I'm really glad that you decided to come in and paint. So I hope you'll sit back and relax. We're going to be putting some bushes on here. And I'm going to make this kind of like sagebrush because where I'm from in the mountains, you see sagebrush. I know a lot of beautiful places like Pennsylvania and on the East Coast. They might not have as much sagebrush. I don't know. I just seen lots and lots of lush green trees. But here we have some sagebrush, and so I'm just adding some brushes or bushes to these paintings. And what I'm doing is I'm taking a small, and this is not the brush I usually use for these, and I don't know why I'm using this brush, and so it's not working as well for me, but it's just a flat small brush, and I'm just putting in an indication of a bush right now, and I'm just trying to shape it a little bit, just to have a little bit of a shape of a bush. I'm going to be saying brush all day instead of bush. I can tell that right now. Okay, I used Prussian blue, and now I'm using some sap green to just kind of give it some highlights and things. It's still really quite dark. But I'm just putting some sap green on here, kind of defining a little bit more the bush. With each step that I do, I will be defining the bush a little bit more. I'll be, defining the shape and the little branches and things. And now I'm adding a little lighter, I think I have a little bit of white in with that. I think even now it looks like I'm using a little white and Prussian blue. And I'm just kind of going over the edges of that bush, giving it some highlights. And the sun's coming from the right, so I'm going to make that just a little bit brighter. And I'm just going to work, and all I'm doing is tapping, just tapping the brush, just tapping the brush against the bushes. And I'm just now I'm using some white to go on the edges a little bit more. Now here's where I'm defining different accents in the brush or the bush, so you know that it's gonna, be a bush. We're gonna tap in, a little bit more of the branches, and just to make it look like it's a bush sitting there. And because the paint is still wet on the bush, the Prussian blue and stuff is still wet, as well as the sap green, I'm just doing a little bit of white over the top of it, and it will blend in because it's still a little wet. So it's just I'm just tapping to blend it in, to give it the illusion of branches and bushiness. But like I said, this isn't the brush I usually use, and was kind of struggling with it to get the shape I really wanted. I don't know why I didn't just change brushes. Who knows? Okay, now I'm just putting some limbs in there. I'm using a liner brush and I'm just putting some limbs, branches, sticks, you know, poking through. You want to always add some limbs and things to bushes or trees because it doesn't look natural if there is absolutely no limbs or for foliage. Anyway, now I am making a bush back there by those two little trees. And I'm just tapping in some Prussian blue just like we did down below. I'm just tapping in to kind of get the shape. Then I'm adding a little bit of sap green with a little bit of white. Not too much because we need to keep our tones. Okay, now I'm going to go over with some more white. And I'm going on the edges where the sun might be hitting that branch or that bush. And then I'm just tapping out to the end and kind of blending it in so it's not so bright, so that the darker side, the shaded side, is a little darker. Okay, and now I am just still tapping in, trying to make that bush the shape I want. I think this is where I started having issues with this brush and not getting it the way I wanted it. So I'm just adding some highlights here and there just by tapping my brush against. Make your brushes and stuff. As you're doing this, you'll just kind of see your brush or your bush and your where you want your limbs or your bushes, different things to be. Now I'm highlighting this a little more with the white, but I'm going to be tapping this down and blending it in. Now I'm adding just a little bit of yellow to this, and you can see I'm kind of toning that down a little bit. I think that's deep yellow I'm putting on, but I added some white with it so it wasn't quite so stark. And just adding more highlights by tapping the brush against the canvas. Just trying to shape that a little bit, make it look a little more uniform, and just highlighting. And it looks like I'm making a little bit new, or a little bit more brush there on the shaded side. Looks like I'm using a little bit of sap green and white mixed together. I think I decided it had just a little too much blue, so I added a little bit of that sap green and white. But now I'm going over it with a little Prussian blue because apparently I got it too green. This is where I'm having issues too with the brush. I just wasn't liking the shape of that, or wasn't liking the bush. I wasn't liking it when I was painting it, but when I was looking at this, watching it, I was like, that didn't look so bad. Why did I paint over that? And I'm just tapping the bushes, just trying to go in the shape that I think bush might be. Now I'm going to put a brush over there by that big tree on the other side, and I'm just doing the same thing, tapping in. I'm using Prussian blue and just tapping in where I think the bush and the shape of the bush might be. That shape is always going to change, but at least gives me a starting point. And just using some sap green now. I didn't clean my brush, so the sap green is going to be mixed with the Prussian blue. I'm just highlighting it right now with a little bit of white. I think I just added some white to my brush and just kind of blended in the colors that was already in there in the brush. And just mixing some paint, mixing some white and blue. Well, maybe I lied, white and green. I need to start showing you how to mix, or how I mix these, so you can know that. Yeah, this is just a little bit of white and sap green. Now I'm just adding some more white. And just highlighting on the edges. Okay, now I'm just putting some darker sap green just to kind of tone down some of the light, and now I'm just highlighting it a little bit. Again, just tapping the brush where I think branches might be and where the sun might be hitting those branches. Okay, now I'm just wiping some of the paint off my brush. Again, going over with a little blue, it looks like this time a little Prussian blue. And now I am just still tapping, tap, 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 tap. Just highlighting it a little bit, making some definite little branches. Okay, now I'm going to be putting a rock down there. It's a combination of ink and brown, ink, black and brown. This is going to be a big boulder. Now I'm taking some white. Didn't clean my brush off so I would get some of that color. And I'm just kind of shaping out the rock a little bit. And I'm just kind of taking, like I did on the mountain, I'm just kind of brushing brushing my strokes in the direction that I want the rock to look like it's facing, and here I'm just rubbing it, kind of going diagonally. This one I'm just kind of making another little shape and just going diagonally too. Now I'm wiping off my brush. And I'm just pulling some of that color towards the back. And if you notice there, I'm going straight across, just so that my rock has different directions like we did in the mountain. Just highlighting it some more. Okay, now I'm just going up to the top, and I'm going to finish just tapping on some paint. And I'm using just the sap green and white. I might have a little bit of yellow on there too. I think I'm putting the yellow right there. And this is a deep yellow, but it has some white in with it. I had mixed white in it. I'm just doing the same thing right there, tapping in. I'm just tapping in the way I want the land to lay. And this is just a little bit of yellow and white. I'm going to go across against my path. And I'm going to take some highlights just around the corner of that sagebrush so it looks like there is sun shining, and then we'll have darker so for the shadow. And I'm just using yellow right here. Yellow with a little bit of white. And I'm doing the same thing right there. Yellow with a little white. And I'm just tapping the direction I want the land to lay. And I'm kind of wanting the land to lay straight, so I'm kind of just going straight across. And I'm just tapping. Okay, now I'm taking some darker. I'm taking some sap green just to go on the side of that rock so it looks like, and where that tree is, the pine tree, just to make it look like a shadow. And I'm coming over here with a little bit of white and yellow, or white and sap green it looks like. Again, I'm just tapping in the lay of the land, the direction I want it to go. I'm using a little bit of yellow and white now. When I go around those rocks, I want to leave a little bit for a shadow. Now I'm going with white or yellow, so it's really quite bright. And I'm just tapping the edge of that pathway. I'm just taking some of that grass down around the path a little bit, onto the path a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of a lighter white, yellow up there. I mean darker, sorry. It's not so bright. Okay, now right here I'm putting a little more Prussian blue in there just to put my I'm just tapping the direction that I want the lay of the land to be. I'm just going across. You know, it's a mountain. It's not going to be perfectly straight, but it kind of gives you the impression that it's a little bit flatter, a little bit, you know it's a mountain. You still see hills and things, but you're just trying to okay, now I'm just trying to put a little lighter color between that tree and the rock just to kind of break it up a little bit so you can see that a little bit better. I'm using white and a light yellow and white, and then I went over with a little bit of sap green. And then I'm just kind of toning it down a little bit so it's not quite so bright with a little sap green. Just tap, tap, tap. So you can see there's a little bit of land before you get to just tapping a little bit of that same color. You're bringing it down here just a little bit to put a definition between the rock and the land, and just toning that shadow down just a little bit. You can still see that there's a shadow there, but and because I put in the bushes and I put in the rocks, I need to make it look like they've been there a long time, so I'm taking and dabbing the paint around it because I don't want it to look like we just threw them rocks down there. And you see this one has a little bit of an angle. Looks like there might be a little bit of a hill right there. That's okay. It's just whatever you want. Just adding a little more up there by the tree. You can still see that dark place where it's the shadow. And now I'm going to take some lighter color over some a light yellow with some white, and I'm just going over that mountain or that hill, but I end up toning that down quite a bit. Okay, I'm using a little of the sap green because I want to tone that down. Still using some sap green. I still want that to look like a hill, so I'm kind of going diagonally. Just putting a little highlights. I think that's just a little bit of yellow and white. Again, just a little bit of highlights in there. I don't want it to not look like there's a shadow there, but I want you to be able to see at least the lay of the grass. And I think that's about it for today. We'll finish this up next video. Thank you so much for popping in. I appreciate every time you pop in. If you like this, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you very much for coming. Love you. You are wonderful. And you deserve the best. Goodbye.